You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts or on our YouTube channel, all over social media, or our morning newsletter, KCSN Daily, dedicated to your Kansas City Chiefs. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
KC Laboratory, sponsored by Emprise Bank.
It's another live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank. Look, an Emprise Bank debit card is good anywhere. You have access to 55,000 fee-free ATMs worldwide through the Allpoint ATM network. You can get the same kind of access to your money as any bank across the country while getting the value of working with a trusted partner in Emprise. We have loved working with Emprise. They are absolutely a trusted partner. They've been great. They were great for the KCSN Draft Guide. And Matty Lane was great for the KCSN Draft Guide as well. Find him on Twitter at Matty_KCSN. What's up, buddy?
You know, I'm still a little heated because Tucker Franklin, behind the scenes here, had the audacity to put me as only a 3-point favorite if you and I were to play a game of 21. And, like, I feel like you're less likely to be within 3 of 21 at the end of the game as you are to score 3 points.
I don't think you can finish at the rim as confidently as you believe you can. I think I can hold point well enough down in the block to make it competitive.
We're doing this. Next time we're in the same city, this is a challenge we can do. You wore jeans so you couldn't get routed up when we went to the Shrine Bowl. You wore jeans so we couldn't run routes against each other. But a basketball is cheap. I will go buy a basketball, whatever city we're in. We'll find a park. Like, we can put this one to the test, Kent.
We're gonna be rolling around in like below the ankle shoes, trying not to hurt each other.
I'll beat you barefoot.
I'm telling you, there's like one long-standing argument in our group chat with us two, Craig and Bearcat, and it is always about who is the best at basketball.
It's usually who could eat the most pizza. But yeah, there's also the basketball one. But like, we can finish this one, and I have the utmost confidence that the line of -3 is way underselling me versus Kent specifically.
If we are all as good as we claim to be, we should play in the tournament, like the one for $1 million. Like, we should just start a team if we are as good as we all claim to be. Thank y'all for joining us. Craig is not here today. He's enjoying some time off, which is wonderful. We're very glad that he's getting a little chance to do that. And so it's me and Matty Lane hanging out again. We weren't on 21 questions last week. It was me and Tucker because we got the question. Did you ask the question?
I did.
I did. I can't believe you asked it. I was pretty sure it was you while I was reading. I was like, I think that's Matty's handle right now on the KCSN Discord.
I had to get an outside perspective from the group chat. Like, I had to get, somebody that was completely unbiased, somebody that only sees it from the outside. And he gave you a lot of credit. So I don't know why you're upset.
I don't know. I need to see. You claim to be skilled, and I just need to see it.
Skilled's one way to put it. I mostly claim to be a pretty good athlete for playground basketball, and my athleticism can give people fits when we play on the court. And I don't believe you can keep up.
I won't argue that you are the most physically imposing.
You to George Karlaftis.
This is good. You want to know why I compared you to George Karlaftis?
I also wasn't offended. I want to say this very clearly. I'm not offended. Like, comparing a regular person to Karlaftis, who no matter how stiff I might have said he is in the past, like, that does not bother me.
Look, when Matty, this is going to sound weird, but when you hug people, you kind of just remain upright. Like, it's kind of like you're doing like a waltz or something. It's like when you go in for a hug, you kind of just stand straight up. So I feel like you're a little bit rigid in the upper body.
Wow, you're making assumptions based on me having good posture.
Yes,
impressive.
because the posture comes off as like a lack of fluidity through the frame. It doesn't come off as good posture. It comes off as like
posture from training people because I had to coach people to keep a broomstick on 3 points of contact on their spine. So I had
yes,
to walk around like that.
yeah. I
That's
just
how I
feel
sit
like
too. I'm sitting that way right now, in case you were wondering.
I just feel like you maybe, when the ball's in your hands, you don't have enough fluidity to be creative. That's all. I feel like it's just I go down and back up and throw the ball into. I think people want us to start talking because
Yeah, I was gonna say we're
we're
got a
getting
little
questions
off the
like
mark here.
Alexander Polk really quick, wanting to know who we think will be the Patrick Mahomes' main target this season. I think it will be Travis Kelce still, Alexander.
For sure.
And if I was going with if you're going with the receiver though, Matty.
Juju Smith-Schuster, and I don't think it's like target-wise, probably reception-wise, I don't think it's close. I've talked about it a fair amount that I think he's being slept on a lot, whether that is purposeful from the Chiefs organization or it's just the way things have gone. But I would be very impressed injuries notwithstanding if Juju Smith-Schuster doesn't easily lead the Chiefs wide receivers and targets.
Shout out to everybody watching on Facebook, on YouTube, everywhere.
Yeah.
If you like the show, please feel free to hit the like button. That helps us while we're doing this live show. Hit the subscribe button too if you'd like as well. That'd be really great. Just continue to engage with this show. And maybe we'll answer a couple more questions if they pop up later. We have a couple of things on the docket today. Obviously, I think we're going to start with Robert Quinn. And, we've talked about this a few times this offseason. And it seems like there's a little bit of, maybe energy coming out of that whole situation right now because it seems like it is heading in the direction of Robert Quinn being traded from the Chicago Bears. Kind of felt like, early on in the process with some of the, conversations that were happening around draft, around the beginning of draft season that, Robert Quinn's time in Chicago might be limited. And, the Chiefs, I think if Matty is edge rusher the one position on this roster right now where you just feel that there's something to be desired, that you wanted more stability, you wanted more there. Is that the position? Is there another position more pressing to you right now than edge?
I think you can make a case that the cornerback room's a little unproven, and same with the wide receiver room. I think we've seen a lot of hype coming out of training camp, or not training camp, but the offseason program that Marquez Valdes-Scantling's been the most impressive wide receiver there, and he's made a lot of plays, and the coaches constantly talk him up. If that's the case, maybe I'm in for a huge surprise, but I do think if MVS, and this is of no slight to him, but if he is the guy that's being the number one wide receiver, I think your wide receiver room might also be a problem, but I'm willing to wait that one out. Defensive end wise, edge rusher wise, yeah, I mean, they just need bodies. Like right now, they don't have more than one body that's proven to be even an adequate pass rusher at the NFL level. And that's Frank Clark coming off of arguably his worst season in the NFL.
And you can and I think that this is the thing I look at with this roster. Like you can like the pieces that they have in the room and still acknowledge that they're unproven. Where like, okay, we talk about the receiver room. I think there's bodies to be thrown at that position. And I think there's good additions and new additions to that room, like a Sky Moore that is unproven, but is a viable, a potential asset. It's a good number to throw at that position to hope that you're going to get, enough out of it. And the same thing with cornerback, because the Chiefs just invested, obviously they lost a ton of production at the cornerback position. They lose Charvarius Ward. Mike Hughes gone, which whatever. But you look at this group and like, they've thrown a lot of numbers at the cornerback position. Even Lonnie Johnson, you can consider throwing, a lot of bodies at that group. Yes, the Chiefs added George Karlaftis in the first round of edge. But I don't think the totality of that group of the guys that they've thrown at that position gives me the same level of comfort in figuring it out at corner and receiver that I feel like those two positions will resolve themselves. I feel better about them resolving themselves. I look at edge and I go, oh man. I mean, I like the idea of George Karlaftis. I think he's going to do well in year one. He's going to play a lot of snaps. He's going to give outstanding effort and he'll be able to play a lot of snaps. And then yes, you look at Frank Clark and what he provides at this point. Juice off the edge, maybe not as much as you'd hope. Good against the run still. But then, I mean, Mike Dana, sure, role player. Joshua Kando, we'll see.
healthy scratch down the stretch. Like, he's a guy that I know a lot of people like because the athletic ceiling and the potential is there, but he did return from the elbow injury. Now you could easily argue or make the case that that helped keep him off the field, but it's not like world beaters were keeping him from being active on game days. He was healthy. He was functionally able to play. He just couldn't get active over Alex Okafor, the ghost of what we were seeing of Frank Clark, Mike Dana, these guys that everybody kind of admitted coming into the offseason they need to improve upon. It's like you said earlier, you can like some of the guys in the room. You can like Mike Dana and maybe how he's progressing in the NFL. You can like the potential of Kane Doe. You could have been a George Karlaftis as a top 10 type of pick kind of guy, but none of those players have really proven to be anything so far in the NFL. And Frank Clark's trajectory right now, it's trending more towards a rotational defensive end as kind of his best case scenario. Maybe he bounces back this year, but there's far from a lot of certainty. And the Chiefs, they're the coaching staff, the front office might be a lot higher. I think I've seen some people in the chat say they might be a little higher on the group. It's possible they really could, but I would just push back that Mike Dana seeing less and less snaps kind of as the year went on, and Joshua Kane Doe being a healthy scratch and spending a first round pick on a defensive end, probably say they weren't loving that group, at least as of late last year. So they do need, or at least having some extra bodies that have been proven at this level would really be really helpful.
Enter Robert Quinn, 18 and a half sacks in 2021. And a guy that kind of seems like he is on the way out in Chicago, the way some of the conversations seem to be having and trending. Honestly, all the way back to April, when you kind of saw right before the draft that, there's been some discussions about his future with the Bears and the new regime. And then you start connecting the dots, and there's just so many dots to connect between the Chiefs and the Bears. Steve Spagnuolo, former first round pick of his time in St. Louis as a head coach. Robert Quinn. You talk about the Ryan Poles connection. Ryan Poles just coming from Kansas City, the general manager for the Chiefs. Okay. You talk about the draft picks that the Chiefs have. The Chiefs have 12 now as we sit here. They're due for, I believe, 4 compensatory picks. They have three or four compensatory picks. I think it's 3 actually. Sorry, the Ryan Poles 2 6-round picks. I thought they might have had a 7th. Anyways, they've got the assets that are coming from Miami with the extra 4th in the 6th-round pick in the Tyreek Hill trade. 12 assets. 12 guys are not making this football team. 12 draft picks are not making this football team in 2023. You look at that cost-wise. I mean, if you look at, there was reports that the Chiefs were in on the aging pass rusher market with the Von Millers, with the Chandler Jones. There was some interest from them, from the Chiefs apparently. Well, Robert Quinn's the same age as Chandler Jones. In fact, I think he's a little bit younger than Chandler Jones. And, if the Chiefs were willing to shell out money for Chandler Jones, Robert Quinn's contract is very amenable to being acquired in a trade. So I just look at all these dots that are, that it just makes too much sense to me for the Chiefs not to be in on Robert Quinn. They're perfectly aligned to do it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of been on that train for a little while now. Like, I'd make the case that Quinn was the best pass rusher for the Bears last year, and we saw Khalil Mack went off and gets traded, to the AFC West. And I, again, would make the case that Quinn was better than him last year. Now, if you want to argue, I guess, against trading for Robert Quinn from the Chiefs situation, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. The Chiefs sat out the veteran free agency pass rush, kind of market. They didn't sign anybody because they didn't want to spend that much money on a veteran. Robert Quinn doesn't cost quite that much cash, but you have to trade assets for him. And he is a 32-year-old pass rusher that, you can go all the way back essentially to his 2015, his last year with the Rams. He's kind of been on every other year. He's been pretty good with some down years in between. So he's been semi-inconsistent over the years as a pass rusher. He's a little bit older. He's not going to be dirt cheap to pay and acquire. But at the end of the day, here's a guy that was like, 3rd or something like that in the NFL last year in sacks with 18 and a half sacks. He's produced double-digit sacks in 2 out of the last 3 seasons. He's an excellent speed rusher off the edge. Like, that's what he does. He's not a bad run defender by any means. Like, he's a starting caliber edge rusher. I think you can make the case that he's even a tier one, like not tier one, but like a defensive end one right now. And he's available for something that's probably not going to be a huge trade package. That's a move that contending teams make. And I'm always going to be for making that move before week one rather than trying to wait and squeezing it in at the deadline, because it's of no difference to the team that's going to be getting rid of him. The price, in my opinion, at that point only kind of goes up because your teams are now getting more desperate. I think the price to get him will be cheaper now. Show some foresight, make the move earlier, and go get a guy that can come compete with the Khalil Mack, with the Joey Bosa, guys like that in the division, Max Crosby to be the best pass rusher, Chandler Jones in the division. The Chiefs could come away with a guy that's the most efficient or productive defensive end out of the entire group and get him for, a fraction of the cash spending at least.
Robert Quinn was second in the NFL in sacks last year. I'll ask this question. Do you think in any way, shape, or form, Robert Quinn stunts the growth of the young? We'll just call it George Karlaftis. Do you think there's any way that his presence stunts the growth at all of George Karlaftis, which I think is probably the priority when it comes to the pass rushers? I don't see it. I don't think that there's really any logical explanation to say like, hey, Robert Quinn gets in the way of George Karlaftis developing. If anything, he's probably a value add considering he's an experienced pass rusher who's played for Spags and has had a lot of success in this league.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it at all. I'm looking, I just quickly pulled it up, and Chiefs defensive end, snaps last year. Alex Okafor played almost 500. Mike Dana over 500. Chris Jones spent some time at defensive end before going back to defensive tackle. So that even steals some. And we know Frank Clark played a ridiculous amount of snaps, even though he was coming back from an injury. Like he played almost 700 snaps. Like defensive end's a position that's going to rotate a lot no matter what. There's George Karlaftis, while I think he could come up there and play that 75% number that Frank Clark has played at times in his career, you don't have to. Like, you don't have to play 75% of the snaps as a pass rusher in the NFL to get, the full impact that you're needed. So Robert Quinn could come in and be a starter, or he probably wouldn't be your bench guy. It'd probably be Karlaftis coming off the bench, but that's fine. You're still going to crack 400 snaps as long as he's better than Mike Dana, as long as he's better than Joshua Kando. He's going to crack, at least half the snaps for the Chiefs defense. And if he's not better than Kando or Mike Dana, he won't. But that's a bigger issue, right? Then you're no longer worried about if he can't outperform that level of play on day one. You're dealing with a different issue and not a stunting of the growth issue. So, I see no way that that's a negative thing for this particular position.
I think Frank Clark's the one on the outside looking in if everything's going right for George Karlaftis, honestly. I think Karlaftis still I don't think there's any scenario where there's not a path to him getting the kind of snap volume you're hoping to, and you're hoping that Karlaftis earns. And if he earns, it's a good problem, and you got to figure everything else around him. And that's kind of how I look at it.
Well, it's probably great to see Frank Clark's snap count go down too. Let him be a little bit fresher. This is a guy that's beat up. His body is beat up, whether it's just on field, off field stuff, whatever you think of his play or him as a person, his body's beat up. He's had a lot of elbow surgeries. He's had some nerve issues. There was the stomach issue. And this is all from his final year in Seattle to now with the Chiefs. His body's beat up. He does not need to play as, 70% of the snaps plus every single game that he's healthy. Limit his role. That's absolutely fine. Right now, the Chiefs, I don't think they can afford to do that. Getting Robert Quinn, though, they could very well afford to do that, and you arguably get to improve two defensive end spots in that regard, with Frank Clark being hopefully better on a limited snap count.
I know a lot of people talk about Robert Quinn's kind of up and down nature of the course of his career. 1 year on, 1 year off, 1 year on, 1 year off. You want to know what I honestly feel about that? I don't care. I don't care a little bit. I don't care if he doesn't play to the same level he did last year, because I think it's probably from a sack production. Yes, I don't think he's the second best pass rusher in the NFL last year anyway. He had a lot of volume from it for sure, but he was still a quality, capable pass rusher. I don't really care if he kind of has a down year next year. I don't backs like he did in 2018 and had just limited pass rush production. I still think the swing is valuable, and it's a worthy swing, even if he underperforms and he doesn't play to, the same kind of level you saw in 2021. If there is a fall off, I don't care, because I think the bar to clear for quality depth at the edge position, a quality guy that can play 500 snaps is worth it at this point for this football team. And, you look at the contract. I believe it's $12 million for this year. We'll go double check this. But I believe the acquiring team for Robert Quinn is only going to have to pay him like $12 million or $13 million each year for the next 3 years. And it's kind of like they have the chance. There's zero dead when they acquire him. If the Chiefs acquire him or whoever acquires him, there's zero dead. There's zero dead cap. So it's just kind of like if things don't pan out fine, you move on. No harm, no foul after a year. But when I look at how much like the surplus of draft capital that this team has, I don't know if there's going to be an opportunity before the season to make this team better the same way I think Robert Quinn can make it better. That's the thing. I don't know if there's an option. I don't think there's a chance to make pass rusher better. And the dots and the ties are just too strong for me to think it doesn't make sense that these teams haven't even had. I feel like there's got to have been some dialogue. If Robert Quinn's on the market, he makes too much sense. Like, I don't think the aging thing holds water in this scenario either, because again, like, you have a lot of cost control here. You can move on after 1 year if things don't work out.
I think if he is readily available and the price isn't crazy, which I don't think it would be at this point in time, I don't know why he would not be available. I think it would be pretty crazy for the Chiefs to have at least not entertained the idea, right? I would be not only surprised, but I think it would be really bad business to at least not entertain the idea, because like you said, that contract isn't something that's going to sink a team taking it on. I don't imagine that the price tag to acquire him from the Bears in their current state is really going to be astronomical compared to, when you see what some of these other defensive ends have gone for, given his age, given what he was just traded to the Bears. I believe it was the Bears is his last, or no, it was to Dallas from Miami. And like, I don't think the price tag is going to be that high. You're not going to give up Frank Clark compensation for him. Make the move. If it's out there, I think they absolutely should make the move, because I'm with you. I don't think you're going to have the option to fix the defensive end room within the year. We could be wrong. We could be absolutely wrong. And Frank Clark comes back and plays, his sophomore and third year Frank Clark at Seattle Seahawks level. And Mike Dana makes these massive steps. And Jonathan Cainto puts it all together with his athletic frame. And George Karlaftis hits the ground running. Like, those things, all of them, one of them, none of them are all possible. So we could look back on this and think it's silly. But if you're looking to cover all of your bases, even if those things happen, having one of the top 3 speed rushers in the NFL, arguably the guy that has the best cross chop in the NFL, when we're talking about a speed rush, just pure outside pressure, getting Robert Quinn, like, that's a guy that Chiefs don't have. Chiefs do not have a guy that's as fast and as flexible as he is on their roster. He gives them a different type of outside pass rush than anybody else has. Different skill sets, better player, raise the ceiling, raise the floor. It's all there. It just remains to be seen if the Bears are really willing to move him.
Yeah, there's some. I'm looking at the contract here now. So $12.9 million in 2022, $14 million in 2023, and $13 million in 2024 for the team acquiring. I believe is what it would all shape out to. So, I mean, those are, especially with the rising salary cap, I think those are really cost-effective contracts to take a chance on. And you kind of got it's the, you wait and see every year. You kind of just play it as you go. And I don't know. I want to know from you, Matty, what's the most you would give up for Robert Quinn? Most. I don't know. I don't know ultimately what the markets look like, because I think his market's complicated because of his production last year. I do think that's a little bit complicated. I want to know what's the most you'd be willing to give up.
His production last year was fantastic. The year before was pretty rough. I mean, that was a bad year production-wise. He didn't have a ton of pressures, didn't have a ton of sacks. Like, I think that kind of balances out. I don't think for Robert Quinn, who's got, enough time in the NFL, I don't think teams are trading for the 18.5 sacks. I think you are trading for the body of work. So that helps in this regard, that you're not trading for that. I went back and looked. Khalil Mack is less than a year younger than Robert Quinn. Obviously, he's been a better player throughout his career. I would argue that last year, Robert Quinn was hands down better than Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack went for a 2nd round and a future 6th round pick. I think that's too high probably for where I'd feel comfortable for Robert Quinn. I don't think I would give up a 2023 2nd round pick right now. and then a 2024 6th-round pick. That's probably a little higher than I'd want. I'd want to use the compensatory picks that I think the Chiefs should still be getting from Ryan Poles. If it had to be their own 3rd-round pick next year, maybe even if it had to be a 3rd and a future 5th rather than the 2nd and future 6th, I would consider it. Like, I think that 3rd-rounder in 2023 is about the only one that's about as high as I think I could go and feel good about it.
Just the 3rd.
No, I could add something to it. I said I could add something to it. But
so let's say, okay, how about the Ryan Poles pick in Miami's 4th?
Ooh, in the same year?
Yes. Now, again, you have 12 picks, Matt. You have 12
I agree.
picks, Matty.
I agree. Here's the thing. The Miami Dolphins pick is going to flirt right there with the last useful pick in the NFL draft.
Mhm.
That 120 to 125 range. After that, the picks don't matter. So that Miami pick flirts with that. I would rather give up the Chiefs' own 4th-round pick if they still have it. I honestly don't know what picks they have. Would I say no if that's if they negotiated to that and that was the final straw? I would not say no to that if I still thought you could use them. I think I could be pushed over to get to there, but no more. If I were the Chiefs, though, I'd really, really try to sit as strong as I can and keep that 4th-round pick and try to either push that 2nd pick into the following year, so 2024, or include a later day 3 pick in the process.
All right, I'm going to throw you this scenario.
Uh-oh.
It's it's July 28th, and the Kansas City Chiefs have acquired Robert Quinn from the Chicago Bears, and they have given up their 3rd-round pick and the Ryan Poles compensatory 3rd-round pick. How do you feel? Are you mad? Are you upset that they gave a little too much up in your opinion? Or is it just are you done?
So they gave up 2 3rd-round picks. Ooh. I think that's too much. I think it's too much. I think so. I think that's too much to put in there because we've talked enough about the Chiefs have some young guys that they probably feel pretty decent about. Whether Mike Dana's ceiling they think has been reached or not, you still have Kando, who they just drafted last year. They seem to like, and you're going to get another year of him. You just drafted Karlaftis. I think using 2 day 2 picks, because ultimately that's what they are, to go get somebody to put in front of those guys, especially at this time of the year. Okay. Another thought that just hit my mind too. If they make that trade, the exact date you said, that makes me think they are very, very unhappy with their defensive end room. It no longer goes from we're uncertain about these guys, they haven't proven themselves, to we don't like what we're seeing and we have to make a change. So in that case, I don't feel great, but I would get it if that's probably where they'd be coming from.
Leave it to Matty to just take my arbitrary July date and turn it into real logic. I wasn't it's July. It's tomorrow, Matt. Sorry.
Oh, well, if it's tomorrow, then I think they probably, I'd still say the same thing, honestly. They probably just decided they didn't like their defense. I think that's too much. I think given how Robert Quinn has bounced around the NFL these past few years, given the fact that he has not been consistent, he is 32 years old, and you look at the way the NFL treated some other guys that are a little more inconsistent pass rushers of that age, they're not getting paid the same way that a lot of people thought they would have 3, 4, 5 years ago. I think 2 third-round picks at this point in time is a little bit high for where I would anticipate the NFL seeing Robert Quinn's value.
I think if they get 2/3 out of it, that's telling you what the market is for him. So that's just kind of how I look at it. And I don't know if I really I don't know if I'll care. And I love draft picks, but if they give up 2/3, I don't know if I'll care because. Again, I think this team has a lot of draft capital. I think these last 2 drafts are going to prove to have been goodwill for them when it comes to, what they've been able to do with the capital that they have. They're not going to take 12 picks. 12 picks aren't making the roster. 10 picks probably aren't making the roster. And so they've got extra force to play with. They can move up back into day 2 and, wind up with 3 picks in day 1 and 2 if they want. I still feel good about the flexibility. And part of me, just go make yourself better in an ultra competitive division. Just go that. That's a chance to make your teams noticeably better, I think. even if you're getting a lesser version of Robert Quinn than what you got last year. I think this is a chance to make your team better.
So I think Angry, Drunken, and German brings up a good point, though. Does Brett Veach see this as a rebuilding or retooling year, or does he trying to spend on this to push them to a Super Bowl run? You look at this team and the turnover that they've had, I think a trade of 2 third-round picks in the following year says this is the final step to get us to the Super Bowl. Do you think Robert Quinn takes the Chiefs from competing for a Super Bowl to a Super Bowl-like favorite? Do you think that move pushes them over the edge to go from we should keep some picks to keep retooling out this team that is definitely undergoing a changing process? And is it going to be worth it at that point in time? Because I do think the mindset that you have of retooling while being competitive versus going all out and competing for a Super Bowl win are a little bit different. And I think that probably would really hinder on a 2 third-round picks kind of trade.
I just... Like, I get it. And, like, that definitely is something I've kind of debated about. Like, is this team just slamming the brake? Like we talked about, is this team slamming the brakes on how they've approached things and trying to show themselves a little bit of, I don't know, grace is the right word, just kind of, take a few steps back so they can take steps forward for the next decade. Yes, I understand all that. But I don't know why you can't have both. Like, I just don't know what the opportunity cost is on, not acquiring Robert Quinn, right? Yes, we're talking about third-round picks. I understand that, but you're still going to have a lot of opportunities to throw picks at the next draft. Like, you're still going to have 10 if you give up 2, if you gave up 2/3, and that's a lot. I'm not advocating for it. But you'd still have good picks to throw at, at the next draft. And then you still, like, again, I don't think 10 are making the roster. So, like, I think you can have both. Like, I think that's a move that allows you. I think that's one of those unique moves where you look at the totality, you look at everything from a cost perspective. Because that's $13 million is not expensive for a pass rusher. You look at the number of picks that this team has outside of whatever they give up eventually. If you're, whatever they would have given up for Robert Quinn, like, this seems like an opportunity to have both. So, like, I don't feel like you have to make that answer. You can still go for it. You can still make your football team better. Do I think he's the guy that pushes this team over the edge? No, but Mahomes is the only guy that can do that anyway. It's something to make your defense better, which could be enough when it's all said and done because you have the best quarterback in the world.
But will the payout of the defense being whatever increment that is better be worth not having those 2 day 2 picks the following year? Like, I get what you're saying. Don't get me wrong. And, like, I think I would be upset in the moment because I think they'd overvalued it. But, like, with given 2 to 3 days, like, I wouldn't care because I like Robert Quinn as a player and he does make them better. Like, I can very easily spin it as to, in my own head, not even like out loud, but in my own head, on how it makes the Chiefs better and it was the right move. But sitting here before that happens, I'll just say, like, I think it depends on if the Chiefs are in where they were in 2018, where they were just trying to be competitive, but they knew there was another step to be made, versus where the Chiefs were for 2019, 2020, 2021, and those off seasons, because there's a very clear difference in how I think you should be and how they kind of approach those off seasons in terms of being ready to win that year at all costs. We'll deal with any financial complications down the road. We'll deal with any lack of depth down the road. Right now, they might be in the mode of trying to build up that depth, keep that financial, availability. And I get it. He's not overly expensive, but trading for Robert Quinn's contract, you probably aren't going to also go out next year and play at the top of the free agent defensive end market as well. So, like, you're making a short, long-term, if that makes sense, kind of move when you do that, plus trading away draft capital. I'm not saying no. It's just, I think it would really depend on the state of mind where they think the team is going this year.
And I think that's part of why this year is so interesting from the Chiefs' perspective, is like, how are they navigating? How are they approaching it? It's because are they willing? Is Robert Quinn a guy they're willing to cash in some of the equity that they've built, over, the trade for Tyreek Hill and, the cap health that they've been able to kind of get to a little bit with all this? Like, is Robert Quinn someone you want to cash a little bit of that in for? And, man, I don't want to waste a year of Patrick Mahomes' career. And it seems like, Brett Veach has always said, we're not going to go into a year, not trying to go for it with Patrick Mahomes. And if that's the case, and if that's real, which, like, I still think you can have your cake and eat it too. I think the Chiefs have put themselves in a very good situation where they're not hurting if they're not hurting, if they take a $13 million cap hit in 2022 for Robert Quinn and give up a few draft picks, because they have plenty of draft capital to play with still. They're still going to have cap space to play with. Like, I don't know. And sometimes I wonder if there's already a move in place and they're just waiting for the Orlando Brown deal to potentially get done. Like that's my dream scenario here is you get two things. You get Orlando Brown deals done, gives you a little bit more flexibility for 2022, and then you go and trade some draft picks for Robert Quinn, because you can do both of those easily if you get the Orlando Brown deal done. Real quick, we'll talk about Orlando Brown in a second. If you're watching this show, thank you so much. Please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. Leave a few comments. We might jump on a few later here towards the end of the show. But likes and subscribes, all those things help us grow the channel as we're continuing to build KC Sports Network in month 13. This has been pretty dope. Anyways, let's just talk about Orlando Brown really quick, because
I have to ruin your fantastic transition. I have to. I'm sorry. We have to talk about Frank Clark. He posted a new picture on Instagram. This is something that we're talking defensive ends. This isn't a long thing. It was a great transition, though. You did phenomenal. Frank Clark, just a new picture. He went out there on the Instagram today. People were a little worried earlier this offseason, because he was some videos of him at a youth football camp, and people were trying to say how skinny he looked again and all that stuff. He posted a new picture in some fantastic shorts and a vest that almost looks like it's made out of a car floor mat. Very odd choice in the vest, but the shorts are great. Does not look skinny whatsoever. He looks like he's in great shape, and that's good, because as we all remember last offseason, a big talking point was Frank Clark playing at like 220 pounds down the stretch in 2020. He added some weight last year, and it very clearly showed. There was some injury issues, and he wasn't great last year by any means, but you could see he had a little bit more power. He was a little bit thicker. It looks like he's even in better shape this year. Last year, he looked thick. Now he just looks to be in really good shape. So it's good. This is a good sign going into the season to see Frank Clark in, also good. Claims 4 months without any liquor. I believe that's probably a good thing for any athlete. Not that you have to, or if you don't want to enjoy a drink, but it's probably a good thing for him in this scenario. And he looks like he's in great shape. So go get Robert Quinn to pair with that guy and them awesome shorts.
Body expert Matty Lane. With all sincerity,
you're welcome.
Body expert Matty Lane he's very good at what he does when he comes to assessing body types. The man loves the physiques. He's actually pretty good at assessing all that. So I do trust him when I haven't seen the picture, but I do trust him on all that. Can I go back to Orlando Brown because you ruined my transition?
You absolutely can. You should try it again. Just do the whole transition over.
No, I lost it already. Much like the Chiefs will lose the opportunity to give a long-term contract to Orlando Brown here in a few July 5th.
That's the two-time champ right there, everybody.
There we go. July 15th is the deadline for the Chiefs to come to terms with Orlando Brown on a long-term deal. And obviously the saga of Orlando Brown has been very fascinating from the outside looking in. Went a long time this offseason without having an agent. Finally selects an agent, kind of off the beaten path when it comes to football. And here we are. We're 3 days away. Deadlines make deals, Matty, but I mean, does the quiet nature of this negotiation or lack thereof give you any pause about whether or not this team's getting a long-term deal done?
Nope. Not a bit has changed in the past 60 days for me over this. I think the Chiefs notoriously have run every contract situation down to the absolute deadline almost every single time. It's very annoying from a fan's perspective, but no, I'm not worried. I will not be worried until the day hits, till the time hits, until it is passed. I'm not worried at all. This is what these guys get paid for. He went out, he got an agent late in the process, a guy that doesn't seem like he had an agent doesn't have a ton of experience dealing with the franchise tag. That still doesn't concern me. I think this gets done. And I'm not going to lose sleep over that, because that's something that I think is so far beyond our scope from where we sit right now, because no information is being shared to really have much of a takeaway from it.
So if you gave a percentage chance that you think this deal gets done, where are you at?
93.
93.
Yeah, there's a long-term deal signed.
you think we're getting a contract signed in the next 3 days, no doubt about it.
Yeah, all right, no, you know what? I'm going to back it off a little bit because I said this on 810 earlier or last week. I think it'd be really smart for Orlando Brown to sit here, look at this, play on the franchise tag, realize that the NFL cap is about to explode as this new money TV marketing deals start to hit. You look around the NFL, guys are signing 2 to 3 year deals with outs after 1 to 2 years because they want to get ready to hit free agency again as soon as possible right now. Orlando Brown cashing in on the most money he's going to get this year up front by playing on the franchise tag and then re-signing next year, if that potential boom's going to come, would be very fiscally smart. I don't think they're going to go that route because players don't like to take that risk. But I think financially that's a very intelligent thing to do. So I'm going to go with 77% that a long-term deal gets signed.
I mean, and with Orlando Brown Jr.'s story and being adamant about continuing to play left tackle and getting the opportunity, like, this might be a guy that's willing to operate a little bit differently. Who knows? Like, I mean, he's operated differently throughout the entirety of the process. And that's what gives me a little bit of pause is it took him so long to find an agent. The agent he wound up getting, being adamant about getting to play left tackle and refusing to, really play right. Like, all those factors I take into consideration. I go, like, this whole thing just could potentially be weird. I don't know. I mean, and maybe it's more on the player side than it is. I don't know. Like, who knows what the Chiefs offer and what they're willing to go for is as well. Like, how high up are they willing to go on a deal for Orlando Brown? That's always we're gonna find out in the next couple of days. Do
you think it's weird if he decides to just play on the franchise tag though? Like, is that something that's weird to you?
I'll look into it in a lot of different ways. I'll try to, it'll be what did the Chiefs offer? Why did he not feel comfortable taking it? Why is he trying to stretch this thing out? Why is he taking the risk? Like, I wouldn't put it, I'm least surprised compared to other people, maybe other guys in the league because of just how he's kind of operated. But I don't know. I'm not nervous isn't the right word. I put it at like 70% though. Like, I still think a deal gets done, but I'm more leery than you. I mean, 77 is not too far anyways now, but I'm a little bit more, and it might be, let's call it 60. Let's call it 62%. I'm going to go a little bit lower. I'm 62% confident that a deal gets done. I still lean it does, but there's enough in the back of my head that I wouldn't be surprised even a little bit, And do you think if an Orlando Brown Jr. deal doesn't get done and he plays on the tag, does that tell you anything about, we're talking about the Robert Quinn side of this. Does Orlando Brown not getting a long-term deal, not coming to terms, tell you anything about the long-term plans of this team?
I don't think so. Like I said, I think financially, if you are willing to bet on yourself to stay healthy, I'm not sold that not playing on the franchise tag, pushing off your free agency an extra year or two, even for when the projected NFL cap is going to boom. I don't know if it's a bad move. Like, I think that might be a smart move if you're willing to bet on your own health. It's not a team-friendly move per se, but I do believe it's a financially intelligent move. So if a deal isn't signed and he still reports to camp right when he needs to and does everything with the team he needs to, I will literally just go, he probably is just trying to make as much money as he can. He saw Kirk Cousins cash in year after year on the franchise tag and then still go sign a big deal money, and he gets all this guaranteed money. All this money is his if he doesn't sign the long-term deal, and it only hurts you if you get injured. So I get it. Betting on himself, waiting for more money is a completely viable option. Now, it hurts the team. It 100% hurts the team. It might make the Chiefs less likely to want to sign you long-term. But if that's the route he wants to go, he's looking out for his own finances. It's hard to be mad at him. It just would definitely make me wonder if the Chiefs start to look for a potential future replacement, because I wouldn't blame them either. I wouldn't blame the Chiefs if they wanted to move on from a guy who was only thinking about himself, and I wouldn't blame the guy for thinking about himself and not the team either.
No, that's what's going to be interesting is if they don't come to agreement on a deal. Who knows? I think you can justify the draft capital that they gave up for 2 years of Orlando Brown. Obviously, you would have liked a little bit more out of it, but maybe they look elsewhere in 2023. Maybe they find an opportunity that can be a little bit more cost effective. And the right tackle position gets settled and you got four of your offensive linemen kind of solidified, and you just got to figure the left tackle position out. Maybe the Chiefs try to get a little bit more creative, have a little bit more flexibility for the future, and go cheap at left tackle. You use that draft capital to go trade up for a left tackle in this upcoming draft or something in that capacity. Like, who knows? Maybe some options open up, and that's probably some of the questions that they got to have with Orlando Brown Jr. And that's what I'm going to be fascinated to watch. Deadlines make deals, baby. You hope you see something. It's going to be fascinating to see. Don't
you dare close the show right now. Don't you dare. Don't you dare. We got one more hurdle to get through. And everybody watching us live right now, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you may be, I welcome you to put your answer in the chat as well. Tucker will throw all these up that he can on the screen as we go through, but I'm going to ask Kent. Let's say Orlando Brown Jr. doesn't show up when he's supposed to. Let's say the Chiefs won't match the number he wants and he's willing to hold out like he threatened in Baltimore to do. Where do your expectations for this team go? If you are from a scale from 1 to 10, like being a 10 right now, how much lower do your expectations get for the Chiefs offense this year if Orlando Brown Jr. isn't going to be there? And who's going to start at left tackle if that happens? Don't you guys feel sorry for Kent?
My expectations definitely change, and the answer for left tackle is, I don't know. Do you try? There is no answer. Jaron Christian. It's Jaron Christian.
You think so?
Yeah,
Lucas Niang.
Yes, because Lucas Niang. I need to see Lucas Niang at left tackle play more comfortably than we've seen in some of those training clips. Jaron Christian has experience at left tackle. Experience is the word. I mean, he's played and he started multiple games in the NFL at the left tackle position. He did it for the Houston Texans. But how do you feel? I don't feel good. I mean, I know Mahomes has solved a lot of problems, and they haven't always had the most consistent left tackle play. But I mean, my expectations lower for sure. And
so how much lower? Let's say your expectations are a 10 now. Like, we don't have to worry about what that means, but you go from Orlando Brown Jr. to Garyon Christian or Prince Tega Winogo, whatever it may be. How much of a drop off, on a 1 to 10 scale would you expect? Would you expect him to go from a 10 to a 7, a 10 to a 6? Like, how much worse would it be with that change at left tackle, or none at all?
It's still it's higher than you think. It's probably like an 8.5. Like, you're nervous every game, and every time we do a game preview, we talk about whether or not Jaron Christian can hold up against pass rusher X
in the AFC West. Bring back Eric Fisher. I like that move.
You know what? That's the power play. That's the flex
for sure. Does he want to come back though? That's the question now.
Yeah, and he doesn't have a job right now, so does he want a job?
Sure, do it.
You can deal with. I think you can deal with an Eric Fisher out there. There's at least some experience there. I mean, he's got good relationships by all indications with the guys in Kansas City. That's probably the power move that Brett Veach pulls if Orlando Brown. And now here's the thing. I'll just say this: Orlando Brown has a lot of leverage, 100%. But if he pulls that move after everything and how he's handled everything to this point, you're probably moving on, because that's going to be a guy that's difficult to make happy. And so if he does threaten to hold out, or he does hold out, now you're having a different conversation, because now that's multiple teams that he's kind of had some issues with, and how he's utilized and all that stuff. So then you start asking your questions. Okay, we gave him the opportunity to play left tackle. We told him, hey, we'll let you, you gave him that chance to play left tackle. You were the team that bet on him as a left tackle. And you're going to play hardball with them after you were adamant and refused to move back to the right tackle position at your prior spot, which is what ultimately led you to being traded.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that would be, I've given him a lot of credit for, I think, being potentially very smart about the way he's handled this process, and just terms of collecting, money for a very dangerous sport. Burning a bridge with the Chiefs in that way by not showing up to even just play on the franchise tag, like being so upset that he doesn't show up to play on day one from the franchise tag with the Chiefs after the way it went down at Baltimore would be a bad look. Like, you would now no longer, it looks like you're just protecting your bag. It looks like you are a hard person to work with that doesn't want to, give at all. You don't want to meet in the middle anywhere. That's probably not great. On the other hand, though, if you're the Chiefs, like, how do you not bend over backwards? Can you go into a year with Garyon Christian and Andrew Wiley as your starting tackles. Like, we saw how the Super Bowl went, and I get the interior offensive line is better than the Super Bowl versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but boy, I don't know if the tackle position would be much better than it was that particular years. Like, that's a scary thought going into the start of a year. That's ultimately why I think a long-term deal does get done. I don't think the Chiefs can sit here and look. They don't have a viable option. They don't have a left tackle. They barely have a right tackle. They have a bunch of guys that could be starting caliber right tackles, but I don't know if they're there yet. They have no one to shove over on the left side. Like, I think worst comes to worst, the Chiefs just pony up and meet whatever demands, that are realistic that Orlando Brown has. And that's why I think a deal gets done.
Yeah, there's 3 days left. There's 3 days to observe. And I can't wait to see. Obviously, if something happens before we do our show, we record on Wednesday night, we will cover it. If not, we'll just be business as usual with the game preview episode coming up later this week. If you like this show, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll catch you later.